when Tennessee faces Georgia on Saturday, College Game Day will be in town. That's the start. It is a matchup involving a top 5 school coming to Knoxville. Obviously, talking about Georgia being number 3 in the nation. And it's a crucial SEC showdown. With all of these things put together, is this the biggest September matchup for Tennessee since the height of the Tennessee-Florida rivalry? Now, I am not talking about the Tennessee-Florida rivalry in the 2000s once they stopped being top 15 or top 10 every year. I'm talking Tennessee-Florida rivalry, let's say through 2000. We'll say from 92 through 2000. I bring up those 9 years specifically for this reason. They were all September matchups. And most of the time, and pretty much every year, or almost every year, they determined who won the East. One of those two schools won the East every year. Now, 2001 was the watershed moment of the rivalry, but it was pushed to December because of the tragic 9/11 attacks, which, by the way, I want to point out, as we're doing the show on September 11th, in addition to the horrible story that happened yesterday, we want to remember all the victims of 9/11 24 years ago, the September 11th terrorist attacks. Also, just, tragedy you always want to acknowledge. It's always hard to move on, but I want to point out those two. But anyways, Tennessee, Florida, from 92 to 2000, 9 years in a row was the biggest September game in college football. It stopped the college football world. Is Tennessee, Georgia as big of a matchup as Tennessee, Florida was in the 90s? That is today's tough question. That is the poll question. You guys go ahead and vote on it. Is the poll question refers to as Georgia, Tennessee's biggest September game since the height of the Vols Florida rivalry. I think I'm not going to give the results yet, but it looks like one side's pretty much unanimous in agreeing with where I'm going to land on this. Now, before I talk specifically about Georgia, Tennessee, before I talk specifically about Tennessee, Florida in the 90s, I want to talk about there have been some big September matchups in the 2000s. Okay, let's not get it twisted. Now, Tennessee has played top 5 teams in the 2000s. And by the way, I want to point this out. These games, don't look at how the season played out. Look at the magnitude of the games when they happened. Obviously, Tennessee was still playing Florida's top 15 programs in 2002, 2003, and 2004 when Tennessee was 13th and Florida was 11th. Tennessee won the East that year. 2005, there were some games of close magnitude. 2005, for those who don't remember, because the season fell apart, they played Florida on September the 17th when Tennessee was number 5 and Florida was number 6. They lost. The next week, Hurricane Rita delayed the Tennessee-LSU game 2 days, and Tennessee played LSU on Monday. Tennessee was number 10, and LSU was number 4. Now, that was the game Tennessee came back from 21-0 down to win 30-27 in overtime. So when you take those things into account, it's not like there haven't been games of massive magnitude for Tennessee. 2006, another one, 2006, I want to point this out. Tennessee and Cal, that was the one Tennessee won 35-18, and then 2 weeks later, Tennessee's 13th and Florida is 7th, and that's the one where Tennessee lost 21-20 because John Chavis didn't know Tim Tebow was going to run the ball when he came in and shotgun on 4th and 1 late in the game. 2007, Cal and Florida again, Tennessee, 2 top 25 matchups. Florida was number 3, Cal was number 12, Tennessee was number 15 facing Cal, number 22 facing Florida when Florida was number 3. 2008, no, there were no magnitude games. There was no game. Once Tennessee lost to UCLA after week 1, Tennessee fell out of the top 25 and wouldn't return for 4 years. So no magnitude in any of those matchups. There was nothing really to play for. 2012, though, Tennessee was 23rd and Florida was 18th when College Game Day came to town. I'm just rolling these off to talk about big games that were happening at the time. 2015, an interesting one. Tennessee was 23rd. Oklahoma was 19th. 2016, College Game Day came to town again. Tennessee was 14th. Florida was 19th. And Tennessee ended an 11-game losing streak to Florida. That was a pretty big one. And then the next week, they beat Georgia with the Juwan Jennings Dobbs nail boot Hail Mary. So that was 2016. 2017, Tennessee and Florida were top 25 teams, but barely, and Tennessee lost, and then both had bad seasons the rest of the way. 2018, 2019, 2020, they were never ranked. Well, they were ranked in 2020. I take that back. They were ranked to start the year in 2020, but South Carolina was unranked, and that was the only game they played in 2020 in September because that was the COVID year. 2021, they were never in the top 25. 2022, they got to number 25 when they visited Pittsburgh, beat Pittsburgh in overtime, and then they were 12th when Florida came to town. That same month, Florida was number 21. But again, there was 12, 21. Florida already had a loss. 2023, they were number 11. When they played Florida, Florida was unranked. And then last year, visiting, they faced NC State when they were 14th, and NC State was 24th. They faced Oklahoma when they were 6th, and Oklahoma was 15th. This is not, I want to point out, going to be the highest combined ranking of two schools for Tennessee since the height of the Tennessee-Florida rivalry. As a matter of fact, so I'm going to throw out a few that had higher ones combined. 2002, Tennessee was 4th, Florida was 10th. But Florida did have a loss. This combined ranking for the record is 18th. That was 14th. So 2002, higher combined ranking between the two schools. 2005, Tennessee was 5th, Florida was 6th. Also 2005, Tennessee was 10th, LSU was 4th. All right, so we're talking 2002, 2005, 2002 Florida, 2005 Florida, 2005 LSU. We're moving forward and going into 2006. Tennessee was 13th, Florida was 7th. That was not as high of a combined ranking because Tennessee now is 15th, Georgia is 3rd. That's 18, 13, and 7 is 20. So not in 2006, nothing in 2007 at that point. So yes, those are the three that I would say the highest combined rankings that Tennessee and a school in September had enjoyed. And so how does Tennessee, Georgia compare to those three games? Specifically 2002 Florida, 2005 Florida, 2005 LSU. Well, 2005 LSU, Tennessee already had a loss. And that was an SEC non-divisional game. The divisional games mattered more during that time. 2002 Florida already had a loss. It didn't have the same hype going in. They had lost to Miami earlier. So really the only one that has the same hype where both teams were undefeated is 2005 Florida. That game ended with Tennessee losing 16-7. But taking all that into account, I would say this game is actually bigger because Tennessee's at home. There seems to be a little more hype behind Tennessee facing Georgia. Georgia themselves are ranked higher than Florida was that year. And it just seems like a more plausible chance. Tennessee doesn't have to look ahead to Georgia to another big game like they did in 2005 when they had to look ahead to LSU. So all that taken into account, I do think this is Tennessee's biggest September game since the height of the Tennessee-Florida series from 92 to 2000. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones. Tennessee's trial attorneys, play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com.
All right, the poll question up is Georgia Tennessee's biggest September game since the height of the Vols Florida rivalry. 97% of you say yes, 3% of you say no. Let's go look back on the height of the Tennessee Florida rivalry. So I just named all those combined ranking teams. Which years in the 90s did Tennessee and Florida have a higher combined ranking than the Tennessee Georgia game? Well, 1990 was not a September game. So we were going to eliminate that, but they did have a higher combined ranking in 1990, believe it or not. Sticking to 1990, funny enough, Tennessee and Auburn had a higher combined ranking, and Tennessee and Colorado had a higher combined ranking, and those were both, well, no, Colorado was September. Auburn was in September, and Tennessee and Auburn tied that year. 1991, Tennessee and Auburn again had the same combined ranking. Tennessee was number 5, Auburn was number 13. That was a September game. But let's go to the Florida series. Okay. 92, Tennessee 14th, Florida 4th. That was the same combined ranking. So 92, Tennessee 14th, Florida 4th. Okay. That's tied. 93. I'm looking at just straight the AP poll rankings, guys. That's what I'm going by. 93, Tennessee 5th, Florida 9th. That's 14th. Okay. So that's a big one. 94, Florida was number 1. but Tennessee was down at number 16, at number 15. Believe it or not, Florida won the game 31-0. Still a higher combined ranking because Florida was number 1 and Tennessee was ranked what they are now despite a loss to UCLA to open the season. 95, Tennessee was 8th, Florida was 4th. Again, higher combined ranking. 96, Florida was 4th, Tennessee was 2nd. 97, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm pulling this up now, Florida was 3rd, Tennessee was 4th, so Florida was bigger in 97. 98, Tennessee was 6th, Florida was 2nd. 99, Florida was 4th, Tennessee was 2nd. What about 2000? 2000 was supposed to be rebuilding year for Tennessee, but at the same time, Tennessee entered that game ranked number 11. Florida was number 6. That's a combined ranking of 17, which is higher than this one. So, I mean, sometimes, guys, we forget how insane that Florida series was. But as I'm pulling it up for you now, and I'm not even counting the 90 and 91 series. But let's just say, for instance, 1990 and 1991, even though those were October games. Higher combined ranking in 1990. The combined ranking was 14th. Tennessee was 5th. Florida was 9th. And a higher combined ranking in 1991. Tennessee was 4th. Florida was 10th. So as big as this game was, I want to put into perspective real quick just how big the Florida series was in the 90s. The Florida series in the 90s had a higher combined ranking for Tennessee every single year from 1990 to 2002. Every single year from 1990 to 2002, Tennessee and Florida had a higher combined ranking than they have this year. That's insane. That's actually insane because this has got such hype behind it. That should give you an idea of how big the Tennessee-Florida series was. But at the same time, this Georgia game, I think, is the biggest September game since the height of that rivalry. So vote on that poll question. I think you guys are agreeing with me. I guess it wasn't too controversial, the take I took, but I thought it might be interesting when I said it. But I guess you guys all kind of feel the same way.